Hello viewers, I'm Ron Grant coming to you live and direct from Tortola in the beautiful British Virgin Islands. A happy Wednesday to each and every one of you. You're watching 284 Media. Today I am joined by Acting Deputy Principal of the Elmore Stout High School with responsibilities for Junior Campus, Mr. Cecil Hodge. We are taking a very close look at safety, security, and most importantly, discipline. We'll be right back after a quick commercial break.
Yo, everything good, Dad?
Aye. This thing got me one way, Daddy.
What you mean?
Ever since I hook up with this thing, can't eat, I can't sleep. This is the first thing I touch it when I reach home.
What you really? Hey, this ain't like you,
Dad, this thing got me staying home, keeping out of trouble me.
Wow. What your name is?
Shit. I talking about my CCT life.
Don't worry about missing your favorite series, sports, news, and local programming. Come to CCT today and sign up for CCT Live to access over 80 channels. CCT Live. Bring it home.
1 month free trial turn into 5. 5 months turn into, well, you know I hustle. I watching ball. I been watching football. Dad, Nickelodeon, Paw Patrol. I am hooked. Hook, I tell you.
Viewers, welcome back and thank you so much for sticking with us. As promised, I am joined by Acting Deputy Principal of the Elmore Stout High School with responsibilities for Junior Campus, Mr. Cecil Hodge. Mr. Hodge, welcome to 284 Media and thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, Mr. Grant, and good afternoon to those who may be listening where it's afternoon. And thank you very much for having me, sir.
An absolute pleasure. Now, a lot has been taking place on the educational front. You are at the forefront of safety and security, most importantly responsible for discipline at the Elmore Stout High School Junior Campus. It is no secret that in the past few months there have been a lot of negative connotations, videos circulating of fights and have you pertaining to particularly junior school students. There is an unfortunate understanding or mindset that for some reason the school may not be safe, that the students are not disciplined, and there is not the safest and more secure environment. I want to begin by addressing that. What would you like to say to the public as we, begin this conversation about the safety and security and discipline of our students at the Elmore Stout Junior Campus?
Well, thank you very much, Brother Grant, for giving us the opportunity to say a few words on the matter. First of all, we want to reassure the listening public that the Elmore Stout High School Junior School Campus is very safe. And of course, and within reason, we can understand why persons may feel that, there are some issues that we need to address as it relates to safety and security in the upspate of the videos that you are being seen circulating. And reasonably so too, because at the end of the day, if you was to see some of the videos that would have been circulating, one could understand, and I think the school very much reasonably understand why the public and those who would be very much close to the school would give rise to ask questions about, what is happening with our students at the junior level. So first, if we look at the dynamics of the junior school campus, the junior school campus is where our students from the feeder school will converge in the sense of where they transition from the primary school to the junior section. So we would have been taking in 13 or more different primary school students. Some of those students may or may not have varying abilities and in some cases disabilities. So if we were to divide the school into two, let's say we do have a section of the school that deals with what we call the support program. And that support program is for children who may have some disorder, whether it's attention deficit disorder.
So before you continue, you're essentially operating two schools within one, am I correct?
Basically, you could say we run two different programs within the school. So you have a program that caters for children who, as I say, would have, for example, attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity disorder, or they may be slow learners or students who may not have, quote unquote, if we go back to when we used to have a common entrance exam, those students may, at that point in time, would not be able to come to a high school. But we have abrogated that layer, or what we would have called back then, holdback mechanism that would have prevented some of our students from transitioning into our high school. So you have that support program, and then you would have the other mainstream program that we run, and you could still further divide that, if you call, average students, and then you have to cater for the above average, and then you could cater for those students who will be below average. So you could tell the dynamics of what you're dealing with. So you would have, you know, the junior school being like the hub of where you would make sure that those needs, to the best of our resources, are able and stretch to cater for that type of dynamic that I've just described to you.
Understood. When you speak about resources possibly being stretched, I want to address three things. Do you have adequate counselors? Do you have adequate teachers? Do you have adequate security guards for the amount of students on the campus, would you say, as principal?
Okay, so let's start with, in terms of the major concerns that we are seeing with the upspate of the fights.
Yes.
So if we look at, what I would like for the public to know is that it is what those students we call the 1%ers. 1% or less of our students are those students that you would find in the severe indiscipline and would need close attention to and close attention by our counselors. However, you ask the question whether we have sufficient counselors in order to assist us with the school counseling program. If we look at the two dynamics that I just mentioned about the two programs, one would have to say no, because we would need a counselor or counselors specifically to address our support program, which we don't have at this time. And then you would need 3 other counselors. For example, we have grade 7, grade 8, and grade 9, which is on the junior campus. So you would want to have a counselor that address your main program in terms of the 7, 8, and 9 grade
Correct.
program. But in terms of those 1%ers that we know that we have, because our statistics have shown that, it means therefore at the end of the day, their problems are much more acute. Some of them come from homes where they are traumatized. Some of them come from homes where they neglect. Some of them come from homes where the drug abuse, the abuse of drugs is literally part and parcel of their lifestyle. So, and then you have, when I use the word neglect here, I may also say that you have parents who have been trying their utmost best with their children, but they need much more support than the school would be able to offer them. So you cannot have a school where you're going to run a family counseling program and expect the same counselor to do counseling for a student, then have to do family counseling with children and family.
Understood.
That in itself is a specialized category. Go ahead.
Understood. I want to focus a little bit more on the 1%, because truth be told, and I'm so happy that you mentioned it and termed it as you did, 1%, because it's a reflection essentially of what the community is seeing. That 1% is unfortunately being ostracized publicly when it comes to the negative connotation, and what I see essentially is the damage of that 1%. It's damaging to the reputation essentially of the school. Now, one of the things that I found very interesting as I've spent quite a bit of time on the Elmhurst South campus from time to time is that you have no bell. And am I correct?
You
don't
have
a
no-
bell. You don't have a bell, am I correct?
Have a
A bell, a school bell.
No, no, no. We have actually, at the junior school campus, removed that bell from the campus. And what we have now placed the responsibility of time management on both our students and teachers, which have been working, I would say, superbly so far.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So when I look at that, it shows me that there is a high level, regardless of the 1%, there is a high level of discipline. To remove a bell and have students still move on time, still get to class on
Correct.
time, speaks volume. So
Yes.
I want to touch on that 1%. You mentioned about some contributing factors to the 1%, the trauma, the neglect, the drug use that has been passed on within the home. What are some of the tactics in place presently that would help to address the 1%?
Very good question, and thank you. When we realized that our data showed who were the students who were the habitual offenders and the names of these students which were coming up over and over and over again. Now, the Education Act do make provision under the extreme section of the Code of Conduct for students to be disciplined in various ways. For example, it made mention about a minor infraction, then it have serious, then you have major, and then you have extreme. Well, most of these 1%ers have reached to where they're in the extreme misconduct section, of which for high school students, that a recommendation can be made for them to be expelled from school. Now, we have tried to get away from using the word expel, even though it is mentioned in the Education Act, to using the word like alternative education.
Okay.
Because let's face it, what we want to do is to make sure that every student that stepped through the Elmhurst High School Junior School door, that you get an opportunity to be able to have access to all the facilities and resources that we have, be it internal and or external partners. So to answer your question as it relates, what mechanisms that we have before we reach to the whole issue of alternative education or expulsion. We've recently partnered with the Wellness Center for 8 of our students who we have identified with chronic discipline problems. The Wellness Center was happy to actually partner with us to look after these students' socio-emotional problems that they're having. Those students were asked to participate in a 3-week program, but the program is going to last for 8 weeks.
Okay.
But the initial part of the program is that they would actually come out of the school, attend to that 3-week program in the morning. So what we would have done, we would have actually, I'm going to use the word suspend, but what we would have done was remove the academic aspect of their schooling for 3 weeks and let them concentrate specifically on the psycho-emotional problems that they were having. So the 3 weeks that they would have gone into that program, some of them have been given favorable response in the wellness report. One of them, the report clearly indicate that we may not have the resources available to deal with the students, so they recommend that some other alternative type of education, or if not, some kind of work program for that student.
Understood.
So the idea is that my counselors would not be able to help students like that. And even for the Wellness Center to work with a child like that, in of itself, the time frame for which we would expect that child to move from 7, 8, 9 move on to go 10, 11, 12th grade, the behavior is so, at this point, what we would call unacceptable, that they're suggesting another approach to dealing with that individual.
I'm really glad, Mr. Hodge, that you mentioned the Education Act and, of course, the term expulsion, but alternative education, because I think it's important for persons to understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, based on the Education Act, the only person who essentially can institute expulsion for a child would be the minister responsible for education. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Right. So not your principal, not your guidance counselor, not your chief education officer. That has to come directly from the minister.
Correct. Yes.
Right.
No persons at the school can actually expel a child. The chief education officer cannot expel a child. The permanent secretary cannot expel a child. The deputy governor cannot expel a child. Based on the Education Act, that element of the education removal for a student squarely lies on the shoulder of the minister of education. And like as I said, one of the, I would call it challenging as it may be, but it is not an automatic thing. You have to literally demonstrate as a principal that you have done all that you can do,
of course,
for that child before expulsion is considered an option. But the challenge with that is, as I said, the negativity and this sometimes what you're getting, this stigmatization that can come to the school while you're trying the intervention. Let's say, for example, a principal is allowed to suspend a child for a maximum of 10 days from school. And some of the challenges what you would have with that, if you suspend a child with so severe chronic discipline problem for 10 days, you could have just called the parent for that child and give that child to the parent in the hand. They will drive away from the school campus. But by the afternoon, the child is right back outside of the school gate. And in some cases, for the 10 days that you have suspended, the child is literally around the campus and creating the same mayhem.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, Mr. Hodge, because in all honesty, what I think our community needs to understand is school itself is a protective factor. Am I correct? And when
Correct.
you see students who are suspended, for example, for a maximum of 10 days, still making their way back to the campus for whatever reason, whether it's to socialize, to wait on their friends, that shows you particularly that the school compound in of itself is a protective factor to the students. Am I correct?
You are correct. And I would say, I said around the campus, but in some cases they do actually jump the fence, and then the security officers would have to be called and escort them back off the campus. So at the end of the day, as you said, that relief of feeling that there is some level of protection and care for them, even though they and of themselves are not able to regulate their behavior to be in a population of 840, because basically that's where the junior school population is, around about the 840 students.
Okay.
So what you would find is now that these students, most of them, they would still find their way around the school, trying to get into the school, which they should be, but their behavior is of such that it cannot be managed at the school level. Nor can it actually seem to be managed at home, because if the parents were able to manage and regulate it,
clearly, yeah,
they would be home, because it will be seen as the 10-day suspension will be seen as a deterrent from you want to behave in that way so you can get back to school. So the help, and we are hoping that that type of mechanism where we put with the wellness center is able to help that 1%ers.
Now, I want to touch, Mr. Hodge, on going back to the 1%, because in addition to the 1%, I'm only assuming, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that many of the students whom we might see engaging in fights are not necessarily a part of that 1%. Am I correct?
Correct. We do have the outliers.
Correct.
Those
And
who actually
yes.
lie outside of the 1%ers and would actually, let's say for example, a child who would fall in the regular program, and to a lesser extent those who I mentioned in the support program, who would consider education very important to them and their families. In other words, they understand the social impact of not literally achieving the qualification to get a high school diploma. The natural, what we would call natural fear, and not in a bad way, to maintain good grades in order for them to actually be seen as a success comes with a certain level of responsibility. So if they, and these are in the minority, the 1 or 2 or 3, who may actually end up in a fight because of lack of poor judgment at that time and is issued a suspension, or it could be where they have a privilege taken away from them as well. They quickly change their behavior because they realize that at the end of the day, I had a lapse in judgment, I'm not going to do this anymore. And of course, our counselors would provide them with that necessary counseling. The classrooms also where the counselors would visit and talk to them about, so to speak, conflict resolution. How do I actually, when I'm having a conversation and that conversation becomes very difficult and it feels like I want to actually lash out and hurt somebody, how do I regulate my behavior? So you find those outliers, those would be the one-off where children would regulate their behavior and would not do that again. So you might have a child who may have had one fight in the 7th grade, but reached the 9th grade and never had a fight again.
Understood. So the chances of them having a second offense is pretty low?
Very low.
Okay.
But then the challenge with that now, if that fight, as you would see, has now moved to a media like TikTok or Twitter, and my understanding from my students is that they're in those software, you have tools of where you can literally professionalize the image of a fight. So that in itself, we don't want to not talk about it in the sense of it being also a challenge in the sense of that one-off, because that one-off also carries with it for the viewing public an image that give them cause for concern. So we really want all of our students to be able to have adequate access, as we said, to counseling, where they actually can understand things like conflict resolution, as I mentioned before, but also to understand that they have an image and they have an alma mater when they do leave, like the Elmo Stoke High School, to be proud of their school in their uniform and to see that when they do these things, it not only damages their home reputation,
yes,
but it damages their school reputation as well.
I want to thank you so much for bringing up the matter of social media, because that is so important. I want to touch about social media and its impact on cyberbullying. Outside of the fights that we see, many students at the Elmo Stout High School experience bullying on all different levels, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it happens quite often. Where are we in the fight, essentially, for cyberbullying as it pertains to our students?
Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, for amplifying that point about the cyberbullying. That in itself is a whole level of bullying that the school is now grappling with, simply because we are not a society that literally, I believe, understand how damaging the World Wide Web is to our students and their psyche, in the sense of the negative aspect of what is out there fishing for our children's minds. We may have erred in some ways when we actually say that, you know, our children need access to information and the super highway, but didn't put enough what I would consider to be control mechanism, not so much to control our children from accessing information that is pertinent to their learning, but also to protect them from, I would call big tech companies fishing for their minds to make sure that they now become the next set of economic tools or gains for them in terms of filling their arsenals with money. So
Understood.
at the end, yes. So at the end of the day, the cyberbullying, because schools like Elmwood High School, you wouldn't have all the necessary technological gadgets to stop, for example, a big tech pharma from sending advertisement to our students 24/7 when they're online. All our students, basically, let me don't say all, basically all of our students we know have cell phones. We have also allowed them to have laptops, iPads, which are now form part of the teaching learning, the operation in the classrooms. So technology is very much part of our children day-to-day teaching and learning experience. But we have to protect our children from sometimes themselves, because bullying, in the sense of where I've seen now, some of them fall in the 1%ers as well, where they would actually create videos, and sometimes it's very embarrassing how they are able to use the technology for the negative, but you know, we are not able to help them to engage in using the technology in a positive way. So we have to actually do more on that end. But in terms of the bullying, I would certainly like to make sure and ask, you know, that we look at ways of legislation in terms of those providers who provide internet to students and their parents, that they help them to put safety mechanism that they can help those children to manage, you know, those emotional feelings that come. Imagine somebody actually taking a picture of you and, you know, putting a picture of a gollywog over your face, and your mother and father with you at a graduation when you were small as a baby. And, you know, playing that over and over with nanosecond within the space of 60 seconds, it creates an emotional anger and frustration that makes you want to lash out. So we have that type of thing, and we have to fix that, because really and truly, you could be in church with your child, and the child is there on the phone, but that child could literally be right next to you and be bullying somebody miles away. Or it could be the other way. Somebody miles away could be bullying a child right in school as he sits. Because remember, on these laptops that we give our children now can download apps. So they can literally, just like their phones, they can have those apps on their computer. And this is something we have to fix, because really and truly, if we are going to have them in school, we're going to have to be able to protect them 24/7 while we school. So cyberbullying is a problem. What we do now, as we see the videos and we see who they are inside of those videos, we call those students in, we have conversation with them, we sit down and we search and search. Sometimes it takes days before we do find out who are the persons that may have actually created a video or image in terms of cyberbullying somebody else. So that in itself also is time consuming and takes away from, you know, an administrator like myself,
Of course.
who would need to actually engage in dealing with other curricular issues. But it is the order of the day. But that cyberbullying is a critical thing that we need to address. And I don't think that we have the necessary personnel in the BVI who can help. But we just need to actually
tap into that.
Tap into those resources. They
Thank
may
you
not
so
be
much for
cheap.
your honesty in
They
that
may
regard.
not be cheap, but we have to do it.
Thank you so much for your honesty in that regard, because as I said, we do see it from time to time across the territory. And one of the things, as you spoke earlier about trauma, I do believe that cyberbullying in and of itself is a contributing factor to trauma and the way some of our students really interact. Mr. Hodge, in the final analysis, we spoke about the 1%, we spoke about the traumas that would contribute to the 1%, we spoke about the first-time offenders. Our society is now being plagued with a negative reputation of the Elmore Stout High School, one that, in all fairness, is not accurate. I want you to speak to our parents, I want you to speak to our community members as we move forward and really try to mitigate some of the behaviors that we are seeing in our community, and most importantly, as it pertains to the sharing of such negative content, like the fights that we've been seeing.
Right. First of all, let me say to the community that you do have a safe junior school campus. And like I said, it is your 1%ers, and as I said, the one outliers that you would see in those videos that literally would create the impression that you have a safety issue. And as I said, it is reasonable for you to feel that way, and it's understandable. So what we have to do now, provide more of the positive things that we want to show to you, the public, that are being done in your schools, because bad seem to always outweigh the good. And one of the downfall have always been of education, and then that's not just now. Fights have always been parts of school, and I've been in the system for a while now, and I've seen many fights. But what we are not good at is publicizing the amount of good that are happening within our education system. So from the public's perspective, I want you to certainly continue to reach out where you feel that you have, you know, an idea, and to support, you know, our schools. And I say schools here meaning all schools, because I don't think that, you know, the whole issue of fights and those things are only germane to our junior school campus. And this is something we certainly want to address throughout the Virgin Islands. So I want the listening public to really understand, first of all, there is, you know, safety mechanisms that are put in place, and they're working, but it's going to take time. Some of them, I know for a fact, we have to be intolerant to and literally make hard and fast decisions, because we just don't have the time in the school to deal with some of those problems that I just spoke to you about in terms of some of the 1%ers problem. For our parents, who it is we know struggling with a child who is difficult to deal with on a day-to-day basis, you know, there is a lot more support now than there were when I was growing up and going to school. For example, the Wellness Center for the program that I mentioned, as I said, it's a 3-week program. Our children went there for the first 3 weeks, and then they have to go there, you know, on Mondays and Fridays and still be in school. So we are trying that. Don't give up. Reach out for help. Our school counselors can get you in touch with any of our partners that we have outside and are willing to help. And I say willingly because the Wellness Center even asked if they can have a space on the school campus to assist, and that is very good, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to be proactive and not reactive. To our teachers and to our students, again, we want to also let them rest assured that every effort is being made to actually make you feel very much, you know, want to wear your uniform, want to come to school, want to enjoy the benefits of a good education. And certainly we understand that, you know, these images that you would see, as I said, in terms of the videos, and again, they're being used by some of these social medias that we certainly, as I said, have to address. The TikTok, the Twitters, things that are actually feeding on children's negativity. We really want you to minimize, using these tools for that. And in some cases where the negativity is coming across, don't glamorize it, don't hype it up. Find a way to actually say to those who are responsible, we expect better of you. Find a way to say to the providers, can we look at ways of literally not allowing our children access to these types of tools when they're being used for bullying, when they're being used to actually, so to speak, hype up a situation that you don't want. I would call it a societal ill.
Absolutely.
You understand? To hype those things up. Don't do that, because when you do that, all you're doing is further getting us away from the location or the mark that we want to be. So help us to get to the position where our children can use the technology and use it responsibly. Because if they can actually move on the campus without a bell, knowing they have a timetable and they move, them and their teachers manage their time. So if they can do that, it tells me that they can do greater things with their time, with the technology. They can do much greater things than sometimes just getting caught up, in producing a video that literally creates a frenzy in people and make the public or teachers or students, other students, feel so uncomfortable. So I really want to ask for that support in helping us to make sure that the junior schools' goal that they're aiming for, which is to provide that safe and prosperous environment for all who come to us at the junior school level.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hodge, for your time and for your reassurance of safety and security, as well as the quest to continue to work on discipline. Viewers, at the end of the day and in the final analysis, it still takes a village to raise a child. This is just the first interview, of course. We do plan on speaking directly with some of our school counselors as well as law enforcement, in addition to other principals. I want to thank you for your time and continue to do your best. I'm Ron Grant for 284 Media. Have a beautiful rest of the day. Bye-bye.